On Tech News Today, we talked to 9 to 5 Mac's Mark Gurman about his recent exclusives on the Apple iWatch. Plus, Apple is inviting the fashion press to the event, and the details around Apple's forthcoming payment system are coming into focus. And GM is working on self-driving Cadillacs. All that and more coming up right now.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, September 8th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by Citrix ShareFile. Enhance your workflow. Send files of almost any size easily and securely with Citrix ShareFile. Try ShareFile today. For a 30-day free trial, go to sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter TNT. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TNT. Tech News Today is a show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. I am Mike Elgan, and with me is Jason Howell.
I'm here.
Who's going into hibernation for the Apple launch. And
no, I'm eagerly awaiting the Apple launch. Seriously, after everything I've heard about the Moto 360's battery performance over the weekend, I want to know what Apple's going to bring, because they're gonna raise the bar a little bit, I think.
Well, I know you're a fashionable guy and a trendy guy, and so I think maybe the Apple iWatch is for you.
Maybe I'll have one on each wrist. I don't know.
There you go. Why not? And Lindsey Turrentine is with us, as well as our co-anchor. Welcome, Lindsey Turrentine.
Good morning.
And we have so much to cover and not much time to cover it, so why don't we launch right into it. You know, Apple's going to announce new iPhones and a smartwatch tomorrow. The closer we get to the event, the more exclusives are published by 9 to 5 Mac's Mark Gurman. I spoke to Mark this morning, and here's that interview. So welcome, Mark Gurman.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So your sources told you that Apple's wearable device will run third-party apps and have its own app store. Can you tell us about that?
Right. So the deal here is just like the iPhone, the iPad, and the iPod Touch. This new watch device that Apple's announcing tomorrow will be capable of running apps made by third-party developers. We've heard from sources with knowledge of the device that Apple has already provided an SDK to some big-name developers. One is Facebook, another is another social network, and then there's some services companies that you can imagine in there as well. And what an SDK is, it's the software kit, like Xcode, that allows developers to actually build applications for that App Store. Now, at the very least, this watch will have a section on the App Store on the iPhone of watch apps that are, able to run through the iPhone apps, or it could be a full-fledged store on the watch itself. We're not entirely sure, but the big picture here is that the watch will have its own app ecosystem, and that's going to be a very big deal for both developers, customers, and Apple.
Now, you said that those early developers have had the SDK only for a very short period of time. Do you think that there's enough time for them to actually be demonstrated at the event tomorrow?
I think at the very least they'll have some rough mock-ups or approximations about what they're going to be working on. But I'd bet on the final product of the apps when they ship early next year alongside the watch could, range from being slightly different to much different. We'll have to see. There's a nice bit of time between tomorrow and the actual launch. So it'll be interesting to see what people come up with during that short time frame. The big deal here is that it's unlikely that many developers will have actual hardware to test on until the launch. So it's to be seen who Apple gives early hardware to. Probably the same people who have the early software development kit right now. But mainstream developers, mom and pop development shops, they might have a more difficult time getting apps out for launch, not having to do with timing just because they won't have the hardware yet.
Yeah, and the fact that Apple apparently hasn't let anyone at all see the actual hardware is the reason why we have no idea what it's going to look like, I imagine. Now, you said you said the smartwatch SDK would make use of, quote, continuity, handoff, and widget features for iPhone users. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So besides adding some new apps and features to the iPhone and iPad, iOS 8 is packed with lots and lots of new APIs. And what that means is that developers can build apps that can use more functions of the phone. So some of the big new APIs in iOS 8 are extensions, widgets, continuity, and handoff. Now, continuity handoff allows you to start one thing on one Apple device and just lift off from the other one. So you can imagine being able to take a phone call on your iPhone and have it pick up where you left off right on the watch, or a text message or an email of the same kind, or an app. Let's say you have Facebook on iPhone, you can have Facebook on the watch, and those will be very interchangeable. Another thing is widgets. So let's say you have a full Facebook app on the phone. Another possibility is that the Facebook thing on the watch is a widget with your events calendar or your news feed. So there's lots of ways that they can interact between the phone and the watch with these new iOS 8 features.
Now, you contributed, I understand, to a report on 9to5Mac that showed some pictures of component drawings and specs for the iWatch, and these apparently originated on Reddit. If these are real, what would they tell you about the iWatch?
So I think it's very likely, or probably like 70, 80, 90% likely that these are real. The formats of the documents really match up with the appearance of some of the internal slides at Apple's supplier manufacturer for the watch called Quanta Computing in Taiwan. So I think it's real. What do they tell us? They don't tell us a whole lot about the design, but it appears to confirm that there's going to be a whole series of sensor functions at the bottom. That's what the circular cutout is for, to be able to shine light and optics through the skin. And that's how Apple's been working on these sensors. It also tells us that there's going to be at least a speaker and a microphone component. There seems to be some coil wire for the speaker, or it could be for a wireless charging feature. What we don't see there is a lightning connector, which is interesting, which may add to the claims of there being wireless charging, and we have heard that it will have wireless charging. So more so confirmation of things that have been discussed and little nuts and bolts, but big picture stuff is not really shown in this leak.
All right. Now, you reported in a separate exclusive that Apple and Disney are both upgrading their stores with iBeacon sensors and NFC readers. First of all, why would they need to upgrade them? They both already have iBeacon sensors and theoretically NFC readers, as I understand it. And also, are these related to technologies or products that might be announced tomorrow?
Right. So besides the watch and the new phone, big part of Apple's announcement tomorrow we're hearing is going to be mobile payments related. So, in short, you'll be able to pay via your credit card through the new iWatch or the new iPhone by just putting it down on an NFC card reader in the store. Now, a few months ago, Apple upgraded its mobile Easy Pay systems, which is how they usually swipe your credit card if you buy something in the store, to new ones that are NFC capable. So they're ready to go on that end. With Disney stores, and Disney, of course, is a very close partner of Apple through many ways, what they've been doing is upgrading their point-of-sale systems with NFC readers as well. So that seems to indicate that they'll be on board with Apple for the mobile payments. What Apple's doing in its own stores is it's upgrading its iBeacon sensors. So late last year, they put iBeacon proximity sensors throughout their stores. And what that allows you to do is, let's say you walk up to an iPad table. If your iPhone is running the official Apple Store app, your phone will buzz with more information about the iPad or lessons or classes having to do with the iPad. Now, it's not very accurate and very useful because they didn't put enough sensors initially in the stores. But what they're doing now is they're adding several more sensors, maybe 10, 20, 30 more sensors per store, depending on the size. And what that's going to do is going to allow Apple to have an even better idea, to an extraordinarily precise degree, where an individual person is in the store. And what that can do is that can add another layer of security authentication to mobile payment purchases. So instead of just having, your phone being swiped on the NFC reader or laid down or touched on the NFC reader, you'll have to put your fingerprint to authenticate it with Touch ID. And additionally, it will probably use the beacons and Wi-Fi to run where you are in the store. So it will be able to compare your location to the location of the NFC reader. And if it matches, then they know it's a match and they'll let the process go through. But let's say your phone is not even in the store. It could be someone messing around and they won't authenticate it. And that's a really nice added layer of security.
Yeah, and I understand how that could easily happen. I often used to go to a Mexican restaurant in Los Gatos in the South Bay in Silicon Valley and sit there in a Mexican restaurant and use Apple's Wi-Fi network. It's trivially easy to do, and I wasn't trying to buy anything, but just, getting online. Now, in yet another exclusive, you reported this morning that the 5.5-inch iPhone 6 may run apps in landscape mode with something you called an iPad-like interface. Can you tell us about that one?
Sure. Now, that's a really big deal. So let me preface by talking about that there's going to be two new iPhones, one with a 4.7-inch display and one with a 5.5-inch screen. From all the leaks and early videos that we've seen of the 4.7-inch model, it will mostly look like a blown-up version of the current iPhone UI. Look identically to the 4-inch iPhone 5S, but bigger. The 5.5-inch phone might have a new twist, though. If you turn the phone on its side, the UI will turn into what an iPad looks like when you have it in landscape orientation. And what that allows you to do is see more content and be more productive. So for instance, on the left side, if you're in the Contacts app, it will show you your lists of contacts. And if you click Mike Elgan on the right side, it'll show everything about you in the contact card. Previously, or on the 4.7-inch phone and the 4-inch phone, you would have to tap Mike Elgan, and then it would move into a new UI, and that would throw away your whole contact list. And so that means that it's a slower process. So now this 5.5-inch iPhone will be a true phablet. It will actually be a mix between an iPhone and an iPad. With all these Samsung phones that we've seen is they've just had blown-up phone UIs. So if Apple's already moving into this big phone space, it looks like they're going to do it right. And for Apple, that's not a surprise at all.
Well, Mark Gurman, I want to thank you for taking the time today and recording this interview with me. Great stuff as always, tons of scoops. It seems like the closer we get to the launch, the higher the rate of scoops on your part. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much, and enjoy tomorrow's event.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Right, take care. Mark Gurman writes at 9to5mac.com, and you can follow him on Twitter, and you should, at Mark Gurman on Twitter. Well, if you watched Twit yesterday, you heard Leo talk about rumors that Apple built a giant fashion catwalk to showcase the Apple iWatch. Now, Reuters' Christina Farr reports that top fashion editors and fashion bloggers have been invited to the Apple event tomorrow at the Flint Center in Cupertino. Christina joins us now to talk about her report. Welcome to Christina.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Well, we're so glad you're here. Now, Apple is inviting the fashion press, but are they accepting the invitations?
Well, Apple's chosen an interesting time for the event because we're smack bam in the middle of Fashion Week, which is really Fashion Month because we've got huge runway shows all over the world in Milan, Paris, New York. But many of the publications that Apple has invited for the first time, some of them do plan to send along an editor or two to cover the event.
Do we know which outlets were invited? Were these the typical, the fashion press that we would think of at first blush, Vogue, magazines like that?
Absolutely. Typically, what Apple does is they will invite the tech press to their big keynote events because it's typically gadgets and products and new applications that are being released. But this year, for the first time, rather than hosting a separate event for the fashion press in New York, they've invited this media from publications like InStyle and Refinery 29 to the event for the first time to cover it. That certainly suggests that there is some new wearable product that they're planning to release.
Now, Christina, Samsung and Intel last week announced blinged out smartwatches as well. I can understand why geeks in Silicon Valley want to be associated with the fashion industry, especially around this sort of device, which is kind of a fashion accessory. But do the fashion press and fashionable people generally want to get their accessories from geeks in Silicon Valley?
Many of these fashion editors that I spoke to are very interested in the wearables trend, but do see it as being very much in its infancy. And many of the smart watches and fitness bands that they've seen on the market today don't really appeal to the sort of young, stylish female crowd. So there are high expectations for Apple to deliver something that's a little bit more sleek and stylish that their average reader would want to wear. And they're very keen to review the device once they get a look at it tomorrow.
Do they seem optimistic? Do they feel like the Apple really is the one who can do it, who can make this wearable something that people want to be seen with?
Yes, absolutely. I spoke with an editor from InStyle who pointed out that Apple has never really consulted the fashion industry much in the past, but some of their devices, he said, were like a work of art. So there's no real reason, they think that Apple should be consulting with, say, a Donna Karan or some other famous fashion designer. But they do expect that given the sort of obsession with design that Apple and the sort of culture of Apple, that we'll see something that is, very cognizant of being wearable. And finally, we might see a device hit the market, or a wearable hit the market that's actually wearable.
And of course, Apple is famously poached from the fashion industry, and we've talked about that on numerous occasions. Christina Farr writes at Reuters.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Chrissy Farr. That's F-A-R-R. Thank you so much for joining us today, Christina. Well, in just a minute, we're going to talk more about Apple's offering tomorrow and talk about their payment system, the details of which are now coming into focus. But first, I want to tell you about Citrix ShareFile. This episode is brought to you by ShareFile, and I mean that literally. The interview with Mark Gurman you saw earlier, well, I had to get that to Jason. I recorded that on my own laptop, and I had to get it to Jason fast and reliably, and it was a huge file. So, of course, I sent it with ShareFile. And that's how all files should be sent over the internet, because you don't want to attach things to email. It's simply not secure. There are a bunch of reasons why you don't want to do that. First of all, it's not secure. If you have any sort of sensitive information, even slightly sensitive information, just any sort of file you don't want the wrong people to get their hands on, you want to use ShareFile. If it's a large file like the one I sent to Jason this morning, you want to use ShareFile for that as well. And if you want convenience and control over the files that you send, you want ShareFile for that as well, because with a regular attachment, once you've sent it, it's gone. It's out of your control, and you don't know what could happen to it. With ShareFile, you maintain control over that file even after you send it. For example, you can terminate its availability. You can determine how many times somebody can download it, exactly who can download it, for how long they can download it, and you can be notified when it gets downloaded. And that is a fantastic feeling, to know that you continue to have control over the files you send online. It's just a fantastic service. So sign up today, try our 30-day free trial, no obligation, and go to sharefile.com. Click the microphone at the top of the homepage and enter TNT. And remember, visit sharefile.com and type TNT. Well, Lindsey, the Apple's long-awaited mobile wallet system is finally coming into focus, and we're getting some interesting information from the banking press.
Yes, according to a blog called Bank Innovation, Apple is going to use NFC, which has long been rumored, but also use something called tokenization in its payment system. And tokenization is a really interesting security concept. Here to talk about it is Ian Carr, as a reporter for Bank Innovation. Ian, how are you?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Can you tell us a little bit more about tokenization and how this might help consumers stay safe if it in fact is being used by Apple?
Well, here's the thing that a lot of the people in the main tech press is getting, not exactly correct. Tokenization isn't just for payments. There's a broad range of applications in the real world when it comes to tokens. Here's how it works. Essentially, a token is a highly complex string of characters that essentially turns your, in Apple's case, it's going to turn your credit card number, which is usually 16 digits, right on the front of the credit card. It's going to turn it into essentially a string of numbers and letters that can't be easily broken by a hacker. So essentially, the token adds an interesting layer of security to the payments system, because it lets users transfer and pay for retail goods without actually transferring the credit card information. And essentially, so we did an interview with a VP from Visa recently about tokenization, because Visa is a leader in the tokenization industry, and they told us that a token is essentially worthless by itself unless you have the accompanying credit card data. So it looks like that it's going to add a much needed layer of security, especially after these Target and Home Depot breaches.
So in other words, you have a credit card number. That credit card number gets stored by maybe Visa or MasterCard or somebody like that. Your phone holds the token. That token has no connection to that number other than in some database somewhere else. So it in itself is meaningless. And once you use it, it's gone. Is that the general concept? Yeah, that's correct. And I mean, the tokens work in a broad range of other areas as well, not just in payments. For instance, you can also, we wrote this in our report, we talked to some analysts, and they're really excited about this technology because it looks like you can use tokens for almost anything that you need a key for. So hypothetically, when you walk into a hotel and
You have the iPhone 6 with you. You don't really need to go to the register to pick up your key. Your token will serve as your key, and you can just go straight to your room.
Now, Apple has patents related to tokenization. Can you tell us about those patents?
Yeah, I mean, the patents were filed a couple years ago, and we recently just uncovered them. And they focus a lot on essentially making transferring secure information between two parties a lot easier, because they have a third party who serves as a I guess as an intermediary, who says, yes, this person is hypothetically Ian Carr, and he has the accompanying credit card data, and so basically it verifies who you are and that you have the information necessary.
Now, of course, you can...
Sorry, that's according to the patents.
Okay, I see. So now you can imagine the use of tokenization technology with NFC-based payments from the phone or from the watch. But how about between the phone and the watch? Is there going to be a tokenization process or NFC involved in those in that communication?
That's certainly possible. There's a couple issues with that, though. Between the watch and the phone, the watch would need a secure element to the device, because, as we previously reported, the financial institutions that Apple reached a deal with are really trying hard to minimize the risk when it comes to mobile payments. And as of now, it's very hard to determine what technology the watch will have. Will it have Touch ID? It's very hard to say. It seems like it might need some sort of Touch ID to in order for it to make sense as a paying with the watch. Maybe a connection could be made between the watch and the phone using BLE. That's certainly a possibility as well.
Ian, can you tell us a little bit more about the hardware that we think is being used in stores itself? Like you had noted in your article that there's a specific point of sale piece of hardware that Apple is already using and some other retailers are using. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we confirmed at Bloomingdale's visually that Bloomingdale's was equipped with the same point of sale terminal as the Apple Store. The terminal, according to our sources, is the Verifone MX915, which, according to the Verifone website, it comes with NFC baked in to the terminal, which means that NFC payments should be allowed in the stores using the iPhone 6. It's really, that being said, we weren't allowed to take pictures, unfortunately, of the Bloomingdale terminal, but we reached out to Bloomingdale's for a comment, and we're hoping that they'll get back to us.
Awesome.
All right, well, that's a really nice exclusive. Ian Carr is at bankinnovation.net, and you can follow him on Twitter at Ian Carr with one R at the end and also an underscore at the end. Thank you so much for joining us, Ian Carr.
Thanks a lot, guys.
General Motors is working on a self-driving Cadillac, sort of. GM plans what they're calling a Super Cruise system for 2016 cars, and this lets drivers take their hands off the wheel while driving. Jeff Bennett wrote about the news for the Wall Street Journal and joins us now. Welcome, Jeff Bennett.
Thanks. Thanks very much for having me.
So you wrote that these cars will have Wi-Fi-enabled vehicle-to-vehicle communication to avoid collision. Will it be only Cadillacs that won't crash into each other, or do you need some sort of buy-in for other cars to have the same kind of Wi-Fi technology?
Yeah, definitely this will have to be bought in by every automaker out there, which it will probably happen, because what you see here is not only car makers trying to put their own technology on things, but there will be a push by the federal government to really have automakers step up and share technologies that will make the roads safer. So yeah, for GM, we see what they're doing across their Cadillac portfolio. They'll extend it probably to their other vehicles, but you'll see, I'm sure, shortly that other automakers, Toyota, Ford, BMW, all of these will jump on the bandwagon here.
So speaking of infrastructure, you noted that the lanes will actually need special markings to work with this car. Do you think that the government, as interested as it is in safety, will be ready for the cars when they get here?
That's always the good question. As you know, the technology always gets there ahead of everybody else. However, the interesting thing here is that this technology and smart highways and those kind of offerings do allow the states to come up with some quick fixes for infrastructure, that is really in dire need of repair. So instead of having to rebuild bridges or other steps like that, by quickly putting in some technology that helps negotiate curves or know of traffic jams coming up, it's a pretty quick response for many governments to do.
Now, Jeff, you're, as I understand it, a specialist. You write about automotive reports and news for the Wall Street Journal, and you're also, I think, a specialist in GM. Now, what's the difference between GM's technology and, say, Google's self-driving car technology? I mean, other than the fact that Google has a tendency to use Priuses.
Well, that's true. I think what you see here is that Google is a Silicon Valley company. They want to come out with this big automated driving car, and they're going to spend years perfecting it and working on it. But what you see here is GM isn't waiting to come out with one big vehicle that does all of these weird and wild things. It is coming out with technologies that help drivers today, and that's the big standpoint for the Motor City, is that they are getting these technologies on the road today and helping drivers. And I think what you're going to see is, instead of this automated driving car where you sit back and read texts or read the newspaper while your car drives, I think that's a long way off. But what you're going to see are a lot more of these technologies that help the driver out, that will allow the driver to take their hands off the wheels for a few minutes and still keep the car in the right lane or negotiating the curve. So what we have here, again, is just the Motor City stepping up and not so much waiting around for Silicon Valley to come through with something. That's probably a good idea. And, of course, Google doesn't mind scaring the pants off everybody with extremely far-reaching technologies. And I think I saw the GM technology on Anchorman 2, but I could be wrong about that. Jeff Bennett writes for WSJ.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Jeff Bennett WSJ. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff Bennett. Thank you very much.
Well, Lindsey, it looks like TiVo's going nuts with the hardware.
Yeah, so this morning, TiVo announced a $5,000 gargantuan DVR. This is essentially a rack-mounted server moonlighting as a DVR, and it can serve 4,000 hours of HDTV, can record that much, and 26,000 hours of standard def television. That's 12 times more than the next largest DVR, according to TiVo. I kind of believe them. That thing is giant.
Why would anybody? How could anybody be so devoted to television? Or I don't know what's the market for this thing?
Okay. I think the market is probably businesses who need to record all that television. So we're talking about media businesses. You know, you look at something like, I don't know, The Daily Show. They need all these clips. They have to record everything and have it at their fingertips. There are actually some uses for this. Given that the uses for this are probably pretty narrow, I think $5,000 is pretty cheap. Yeah. Maybe, honestly. Yeah, maybe Leo will buy a rack of these things. I wouldn't put it past him. This sounds like it'd be pretty cool, actually. Yeah, it's really interesting to see TiVo try to compete, and this is an odd and unexpected development in that market. You know, it's fun to see a company just go completely nuts with the power and the capacity. And I remember years and years ago. Remember the Terra server? Lindsey, you may be too young to remember that, but Microsoft had a product called the Terra server. It was basically like Google Maps. It was a database of satellite maps, and it was called the Terra server because it had 1 terabyte of data. It was like so big we couldn't even our minds couldn't even comprehend that much data storage, right? And this thing has 24 terabytes. That's 24, and you can own it for a low price of only $5,000. Wow, what a development. Just for your TV.
This makes it more of an archival machine, though, than anything, right?
Yeah.
It's really...
Yeah, and you can actually, there's some software available to move all your recorded videos from your PC over to this device too, so you can kind of house everything in the same place. And it essentially just uses the regular old TiVo software applied to just a giant storage device. Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Maybe it's for people who are sick of buying all the box sets of all their favorite TV shows. They're like, well, it's already on TV, so I'll get this massive hard drive to stockpile it all, and then I don't have to buy them.
It even has enough storage for every Hobbit movie ever created.
Record every movie on HBO. and Showtime, and you've got a pretty massive movie collection.
That is impressive.
Maybe if you just want to be sure you never miss anything and you don't, you're the kind of person who's like, look, I'll pay for it. I just want it to be available to me. I'm not going to watch it all.
Yeah.
There's some rich people out there who will buy this.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in just a sec, we're going to have some interesting follow-ups for you in last week's news. But first, I want to tell you about Squarespace. Squarespace is the place to build a beautiful, awesome, robust, high-performance website of any kind, including a blog, including a business website. You can do almost anything with a Squarespace website. They have 25 beautiful templates for you to start with, and you can go in there and sort of modify them to your heart's content and build the best website that you can imagine. And it's so easy. You don't have to know anything about web development. You don't have to know anything about design. They will take care of all of that for you and just give you the controls to tweak it and change it any way you like. They also offer a logo creator tool. You can check that out at blog.squarespace.com, but it enables you to, it basically turns you into a logo designer, even if you have no experience with logo design. And all of their platforms have e-commerce. You can sell digital and physical goods. You can raise money for your nonprofit. You can, and this works with the Squarespace developer platform. So if you're a developer, you can modify and build a really robust, totally professional, and yet inexpensive shopping cart system for selling things online. They even have unified inventory management, express checkout mode, data export, social integrations, order confirmation emails, and so much more. Everything you'd want with a site that takes money online. Starts at just $8 a month, and that includes a free domain name if you sign up for a year. And of course, Squarespace famously takes care of all the hosting, so you don't have to even think about it. Don't wait. Start your free 2-week trial with no credit card required and start building your website today. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code TNT to get 10% off. And we thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. Well, TNT fan Jacob Huff sent an email about our smartwatch coverage that we did last week, and he wrote, as a marathon enthusiast who puts in 30 to 40 miles a week year-round, I think there's a market segment that's been somewhat overlooked. Runners spend a lot of money on GPS watches. Personally, I'm on my third. Many of the new auto-winding watches have heart rate monitors, but how useful is that? We need standalone GPS watches that incorporate auto-winding. Also, I need a phone while running. The Samsung Gear S watch might be the runner's dream. It might be the best GPS running watch on the market because there's no need for carrying a phone for emergency calls. If it was Android power and not Tizen with automatic winding on top, then I would be throwing my money at them. And that is a really great point. And Jacob is in Shanghai, China. We told you a week ago about the Samsung Gear VR virtual reality headset. When Samsung announced it, they didn't mention a price, but now it looks like the Galaxy Note 4 peripheral will cost $199, according to a report from VentureBeat, phone not included.
I don't think that's very expensive.
No, it isn't.
That surprises me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the device itself, if it's anything like cardboard, it's a couple of lenses, it's a focusing element. There's a housing and a mount for the phone to go in there, but all the brains, all the software runs on the phone itself, and the screen is provided by the phone itself. So, yes, that's a reasonable price compared to how much the Oculus Rift is going to cost, but I think the fact that you have to supply an expensive phone as well means the combined cost of this plus the phone is probably what you might expect for this kind of
Well, it's a pretty good motivator to buy the Note. So I actually think it's pretty smart marketing. If you're interested in this, you want to get to it before the Oculus. Yeah. Like, there's a solution for you, and then maybe you'll invest in that platform. Yeah. I think it's cool.
And still less than Google Glass, which, by the way, opened up, the Explorer version opened up on the Play Store, and you can get it for $1,500. So there you go.
It's so.
By the way, do you guys think that $200 is the new $100 lately? It just seems like it. Everything is $200.
Yeah, yeah. It's a price that feels like it's doable to lots and lots of people, but it's still, you know, a good chunk of change. And Jason, you mentioned the Google Glass. It's kind of funny when Google Glass first came out and it was a invitation-only product. People were screaming bloody murder because they couldn't get it. And now that anybody can get it, nobody seems to really want it. Like that news landed with nobody even cared.
Well, yeah, it was kind of a matter of waiting too long before opening it up. Although, you know, some would still say that it's still not a consumer product, even though it's for sale through the Play Store. At that price, it's still targeting, you know, early adopters, developers, that sort of thing. But $1,500. It's hard to justify that, especially now in retrospect.
Yep.
You know, after what we've heard and kind of the social kind of pressures around wearing glass out in public and everything like that. It's hard to justify unless you have a specific like development reason of some sort.
It is, and it has to be said that I think all this time when everybody was talking about how high the price was, the conventional wisdom was, oh, don't worry. When this thing comes out on the opening market, it'll be $300. It'll be $199. Yep. You know, pretty much everybody said that, and guess what? It didn't come down at all. And I think the teardown revealed that it only costs a couple $100 to make. And so they're making a killing on this thing. Of course, they're providing services, and who knows, they may provide an upgrade, a free upgrade when the new hardware comes out. But I think the biggest problem here is the fact that the price hasn't come down, and the hardware hasn't really been evolved that much. I mean, the hardware is very similar.
Now it's almost 3 years old, right?
Yeah, they did one big update, but it was all internal update. I think we all expected the electronics to vanish inside much smaller glasses. Right now, it's just too conspicuous for most people. Yeah. Well, last week's news was also dominated by the theft of personal photos of more than 100 female celebrities. We mentioned that the event forced a change in 4chan's DMCA policy, and now Reddit, the other major source for the photos, has closed down a subreddit called The Fappening, which was devoted to discussion of and access to those pictures. We've also
good riddance.
Yeah, good riddance to it. And one of the themes of last week's coverage was that this is a transformative event culturally. I think that sites like Reddit and 4chan would never hesitate to just make all these pictures just available, and everybody would talk openly about viewing them and so on. And now there's a big cultural shift where people are basically being called upon for ethical reasons to not look at them, and sites that normally freely provide such pictures are now voluntarily sort of shutting them down, kind of, sort of. So
I'm surprised it took Reddit that long, honestly. I mean, Reddit is turning into a real business, and it took a while for Reddit to kind of be like, you know what, this is morally really terrible. Yeah. When we have to shut it down. Yeah. Yeah. So good riddance, as you said. Well, we've also been covering Twitter's transformation into something beyond the simple microblogging service it used to be. Now Twitter is testing a buy button that lets users shop directly from Twitter. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Anthony J. Williams in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, who posted this picture on Twitter and said that he loves listening to TNT while at work because it makes the day go by much faster. And that's why we're here, time shifting, making the day go faster. And look at all those. What is it with our audience? They all have like many screens.
They're very productive.
Yes.
Our audience.
Yes. Yeah. And into multitasking. Well, how do you watch or listen to TNT? Just take a picture of your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowDoYouWatchTNT, and we will find it. That's the Tech News Today. Lindsey, Turrentine. So what are you going to do tomorrow? You're going to go on vacation and just ignore the news? There's nothing really going on. It's a slow news day tomorrow, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sleep in tomorrow.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah.
I will be up at the crack of dawn getting CNET ready. It's exciting.
Yeah, that's right. And well, thank you so much for being our co-anchor today. Great stuff as always, and we will see you next Monday.
See you next week.
All right. And for those of you who watch TNT every day, and we love you, we love you. Thank you, Jason.
I wanted a little teaser of the music.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow the show is at 9 a.m. Pacific instead of 10 a.m. Pacific, because at 10 a.m. Pacific, Apple is going to be launching their event. In our case, our coverage begins at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, and that's going to be with me, Alex Lindsey, Leo, of course, and Sarah Lane. The four of us are going to live blab the event, and so you don't want to miss that. Again, that's 9:30. So just come in tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific, and just watch all the way through. We're going to launch right into our Apple coverage right after this show. Subscribe to Tech News Today on Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Feedly, Yahoo, RSS. So many options. Choose your favorite at twit.tv/TNT. Follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV, and send us your opinions by email, tnt@twit.tv. Don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 hour early at 9 a.m. Pacific.